This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. I write about a small town in northeast Mississippi called Columbus. And this is episode number 9 in my series on the Columbus Housing Authority. What started out as exploring how the Columbus Housing Authority got caught up in a scam has now had me looking further into their books and their lack of transparency. So one of the things we've talked about is the fact that their website was taken down the same day that I started this, when I picked up the phone at 2:30 in the afternoon on April 24th and asked, where is their FOIA form and is it on their website? And that day, their website mysteriously went down at 4:40 in the afternoon. Now, why do I know the exact minute? Because I picked up the phone and I called their provider and asked what had happened, and they said that the director had called and asked them to take down the website, and that they asked him did he have any changes they wanted him to make, and he said no, he'd be back in touch. And well, today is May 23rd, and 1 month later it is still down. Isn't that interesting? Today we're going to talk about the bid process and the laws in the state of Mississippi and federal laws and how purchases should be done. Let's get into it. The Housing Authority uses federal grants or gifts to help pay the housing cost of its customers. Federal money is given to the Housing Authority to cover all the normal costs of maintaining a place to live. As a result, the Housing Authority must comply with state and federal bidding rules on purchasing. The laws are really clear, and they're easy to comply with if an agency chooses to follow them. Is the Columbus Housing Authority following federal and state bid law guidelines? No one knows right now, since the bidding documents have not been produced. We are asking for them, but the rules are pretty clear. Purchases under $5,000 can be made with or without a formal bid, but the agency can request competitive quotes. Purchases between $5,000 and up to $50,000 require at least 2 competitive written bids. The Columbus Housing Authority can ask for the bids without a formal advertising process. Purchases over $50,000 require a formal bidding process with competitive sealed bids that are supposed to be opened publicly at an advertised location, with everyone interested free to see the bidding process. The request for bids must also be advertised once per week, a minimum for 2 consecutive weeks, in a local newspaper, with details on the purchases. This month, for example, the Columbus Packet was chosen as the official publisher of the City of Columbus bid and legal advertising. The Packet was chosen following competitive bidding from the Commercial Dispatch. So, using that as a guideline, where is the Columbus Housing Authority advertising its recent large purchases of HVAC work? What about the $250,000 roofing project awarded to an out-of-state company? If the Columbus Housing Authority is not following federal and state bidding laws, they could lose their federal funds, especially under this new administration, aka the President of the United States and DOJ. There is no tolerance for overlooked items. There are strict rules concerning the awarding of bids in Mississippi. There must be an announcement that states the name of the agency requesting the bids, the purpose of the agency, and the deadline for submitting the bids. The request for bids must also include details on the project, including insurance, bonds, completion time, and other details. There also must be a line that states the deadline and location for submitting the bids, and an exact time, date, and place for the public opening of the bids. This is not to be done in secret. These bids are to be opened and tabulated immediately, and then checked for details to make sure the bidder understands the project and is qualified to complete the job. Once the bids are tabulated, the results are brought to the attention of the governing body to determine whether they award the bid, reject all the bids, abandon the project, or re-advertise. A board is never required to accept a bid, even the lowest bidder. Most public bodies require bids to be submitted on paper, in person, and not electronically. This eliminates the "we sent in a bid through email and we were not included" excuses. One of the big questions now is who's handling the writing of the bid specifications, the execution of the bids, and the openings. Now, is Rusty handling all these details? Is he coming from Gulfport to meet with the roofers and the HVAC technicians? Is he serving as the project manager for these events? And that's very important, and we'll be diving into that in a soon-to-be-had podcast as soon as I get the requests I made that Robert Graythree, the current executive director, has been playing games over when he came up with the ridiculous $7,000 for my request for my FOIA information. But that's something else. Is Rusty want a percentage of the contract total for overseeing the work? We don't know. We haven't seen Rusty's contract with the Columbus Housing Authority. So this is how the city of Columbus handles its work and has done for years. Previously, J5 served as the city's project manager for everything from paving streets to remodeling the Trotter Convention Center. Was paid for their time and work preparing and handling the bids, and also a percentage of the work. Fees can range from 3 to 6% of the total billed. That fee is then added to the project cost. So, is Rusty collecting his $4,295 a month for preparing and handling bids? Which he might be, but is he also getting a percentage of the work? We don't know. It would be a great job to have that job if you could get it. Architects and engineers, and they all operate in this same way. This is not unusual. This is the way it's done. However, it is not clear in any of the paperwork at the Columbus Housing Authority, and this is all very sketchy at the moment. So let's look at some bids that I have that are in the meeting notes that I currently have in my hands from my first FOIA request. On October 18th of 2023, some air conditioning units were replaced. And so in the meeting notes, what's interesting, it doesn't say where those AC units were replaced, what buildings. There were 2 bids, which that fits the criteria because this is less than $50,000. And Benton bid on it and Patterson bid on it, and Patterson was awarded the contract. So that one fits exactly with the way the rules are written. So let's look at this next one. On January 22nd, 2024, in the meeting minutes, Larry Jones brought in drawings for upgrades, but we don't know upgrades to what. Anyways, he's had these drawings since August of 2023 at this point. He states, Rusty needs an okay from the board to put work out for a bid. So clearly Rusty is the one putting the work out for bid. Where is it advertised? Commissioner Gray at that point invites Rusty to the next meeting. The meeting notes do not show that he ever came. It's not clear that she ever spoke with him. We do know that 2 additional bids were put out. 24 cabinets was bid, but no decision was made. And then a note says 20 units, I'm guessing it's a renovation, that the executive director of the time was Miss Taylor, says she was waiting for an architect, but Larry Jones said that they were ready to bid. So was no architect required if these were renovations? Anyways, they went into executive session and the notes are very sketchy, as in non-existent. So then we go to February of 2024. This is February 21st, and Larry Jones says that he has 2 bids for HVAC replacement for 6 units. Patterson won the bid at $63,400. Someone else bid, but they don't list the name of that company, and it was only $73,000. Why did they allow this to go out with only 2 bids? Why not re-advertise to meet the criteria? And let me go back to the criteria. Let's read it again. Purchases over $50,000 require a formal bidding process with competitive sealed bids that are supposed to be opened with everyone interested free to see the bidding process. The request for bids must also be advertised once per week for 2 consecutive weeks in a local paper with details on the purchases. Second point in that same meeting, Larry states he needs more roof replacement. And Larry and the former executive director, Ms. Taylor, are to get Rusty to develop a plan to redo the roof in phases. Why him? Why can't the executive director do it, or the maintenance guy? Larry Jones, he is in charge of maintenance. Why couldn't they propose these phases of roofing? On March the 20th, 2024, Larry Jones again discusses replacing, this time, floor tiles and presents written bids. All are rejected because they decide they're going to change the flooring type, and so it has to go back out for bid. But they decide that they'll take the lowest bid of anything that's under $10K. But at that point, no bid has been made. The next one is On March 20th, the same meeting, Larry Jones tells the board that Rusty Walker suggests that the Columbus Housing Authority advertise re-roofing Shield Sims and Jesse Carter building. The board moves to approve the ads for bids. I got a question. Why is he doing all this? If this is his role, has he even been to Columbus? Has he been here in recent years? Has he walked the properties? What is he relying on to make these proposals? A little later in the meeting, Jones presents bids for 24 units at Shield Sims. I presume this is a renovation, although the notes aren't clear. There are only 2 bids, one for $238,000 and one for $248,000. One is from Connerly and one's from Jay's Building. Connerly is awarded the bid. I find that interesting that it's such a large project that there are only 2 bids that are brought in. That's not the best way to do that. On April 17th, 2024, in the meeting minutes, it only states that Robert Gray III gave an update on contract work. What contract work? Not clear. And then he tells the board about some bids for replacement shingles on Shield Sims. Connerly had the lowest bid of $249,000, which they end up being awarded it, but the other 2 are J&H for $324,738 and Page for $273,570. On July 17th of 2024 is the next mention of any bids. It states re-roof Page contract, 9 units at William Washington, 15 units at Sims. It is awarded to Page Contracting at $164,870. Page Contracting is also known as Bama Roofing, which, remember, do not appear to be licensed in the state of Mississippi. On July 29th of 2024, the board agrees they must approve contracts before executed or paid. What bid contracts have they ever seen? None are in the board minutes. Only, that's not true. The first time I see the board contract is the meeting prior to that, where they actually included it, and Greg Lewis has it added to the meeting minutes. On September 11th of 2024, the board discusses proposed contracts. I'm guessing those are the bids, and they are Prime Consulting for $95K, J Building and Designs $570,000, Connerly for $114,000. Awards resolution is given to Prime Consulting for $95,000, and it's the first time I've actually seen a resolution number included in the meeting minutes. The award resolution number is number 2024-20. On November the 20th, 2024, the chairperson, I think, gets a bid summary, and there are 3 bids, although I'm not sure what the 3 bids are for. One is $189,053. That's Page, which is Bama Roofing. J&H for $198,500. Connerly for $223,000. They selected Page, Bama Roofing, because it is the lowest bid. There again, did anybody check to see if they're even licensed in the state of Mississippi? There's another note that says 20 offline units are to be renovated, and Gray 3 suggests rejecting all bids outside budget. We don't know what bids that is. We don't know if that's bids that they're expecting to come in, but that is the end of the information we have. So part of the problem is they don't understand the laws associated with how bids are supposed to be structured, how purchases are to be bid out, how meeting minutes could reflect the work that's being done, and how that contract should read. They're not looking to see if they are licensed in the state of Mississippi before they're allowed to even bid on a project. We're not seeing a lot of the information that would normally be seen in a meeting packet for a board meeting that relates to new contracts going out for a bid. Now, could those contracts be okay? Possibly. Could Mr. Walker not only get a retainer but also a cut of the action? Possibly. Is this process transparent? Not that I can tell. What's interesting to me is that there is so much money passing through this organization and so little oversight, and the board seems to just rubber stamp whatever is put before them. There's not a lot of looking into the contracts. There's not a lot of discussion about where the bids have been advertised. None of those things are happening. And what I find interesting is I have never seen a Columbus Housing Authority project bid advertisement in any of our local papers. I would be interested to know if anybody who works at the Commercial Dispatch or at the Columbus Packet are aware if the Columbus Housing Authority has ever advertised any of their projects in their papers. Do they even have a formal advertising process? The state of Mississippi states once per week minimum of 2 consecutive weeks in a local newspaper. Local means Columbus, and we have 2 newspapers here. So I'd love to hear from the advertising managers or the editors at the Columbus Packet or the Columbus Dispatch and see if Columbus Housing Authority has ever bothered to buy any ad space for their formal advertising process. I think that's just the first stop in all of these questions. Anyways, that's what I have for tonight, and I hope you join me next time. This is Shannon Evans, the Tom Bigby Tales. Until next time.